Hey, how you doing? My name is Chris. Welcome to my shop. Box joints. Really a nice joint to be able to do, and it's a pretty strong one as well. There's a lot of jigs out there that you can see videos on, but some of them actually are, they're pretty complicated. And to be honest with you, doesn't need to be complicated. Stick around. I'm going to show you how to make a quick and easy box joint jig. Coming up next. Okay, simple box joint jig. I am simply using a piece of 3/4 inch plywood here, and the measurements on this are up to you, but this one is about 16 inches long and about 10 inches wide. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be that wide, but this is just a scrap piece that I had laying around, so unless it becomes a hindrance, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. What we want to start with is we want to make a mark on this board about 3/4 of an inch in on this side. We'll do that real quick here. And this box joint jig is so simple because you're basically just going to attach this to the miter gauge on your table saw. All we're going to do now is take that mark that we made on the board and line that up to the left side of our miter gauge there. And I'll grab a little pattern marker here and just mark the drill hole locations on the miter gauge here with the board, so I know where to actually screw this thing in at. And as you can see, the positioning of this board, if you look at it, once this is all lined up and screwed into the miter gauge, the saw blade is going to enter right about here. I'm going to have a dado stack in there in the future, and our actual joints that we're going to be cutting will be cut right about here. This ample space left over here is so that we can clamp the pieces down as we push them through the saw, both on the left-hand side and also on the right-hand side. So let me go ahead and get those holes pre-drilled and get that attached to the miter set. We'll go from there. Okay, I've got this attached to my miter gauge. The box joint that I'm going to be making, I'm making this to accommodate the fingers of the box joint are going to be 3/8 of an inch wide and or 3/8 of an inch thick, however you want to look at that. If you want to do your box joint jig and have the fingers on yours a little thicker or a little thinner, you're just going to need to adjust the math that you use in order to accommodate that. But like I said, this is going to be 3/8 of an inch wide, and in order for me to accomplish that, I had to cut some pins, and I did that off camera. Because one of these is going to be used as a pin on this jig, and the other one is going to be used as a spacer. But since we're doing 3/8 of an inch wide, these each have to be 3/8 of an inch wide as well. And I believe I've got that. Let's take a look. I can verify the thickness of these pieces with just a pair of digital calipers here. So let me get these turned on. I'm looking for 3/8 of an inch. This is the birch, which will probably be used as a pin. And it looks like I've got 3/8 of an inch there. We'll give the oak piece a try, as I want these to be just about the same, and I believe I've got 3/8 on that as well. Okay, having confirmed that both of these are 3/8 of an inch in width, and they are equal to each other, we can move on. Okay, off camera, I just threw together a quick little test jig here to just to make sure I get the width on my dado stack correct, and it took me two cuts to dial that in, but I believe I've got 3/8 of an inch there. Testing it with this pin. Now this pin, we know is 3/8 of an inch wide. It's also 11/16 of an inch high. So what I've done using my a quick blade height guide, raised it to 11/16 off the bed as well. So I think we're ready to go. But let's go ahead and turn the saw on, make that first cut. Then we can test our pin, and if it fits good and we're happy with that, we'll glue it into place and we'll go from there. All right, let's test our pin. All right, let's see if we get a good fit here. If it's too tight or too thin, and it looks like that looks pretty good. See the get the height on it here. And it looks like the height's good. So we're gonna go ahead and glue that in. I don't need it quite this long though, obviously. The most I'll ever be cutting in this box joint jig is going to be probably wood that is, 3/4 inches, and I need two pieces, so I would need at least 1.5 inches out from the face. But I'll go ahead and mark 2 inches out from the face, cut this off, glue that in, and we'll go from there. All right, I've got that glued in there securely, and you'll notice there's only 2 inches protruding from the face of this now, and it lines up perfectly with that saw blade. The next step in this process, remember our spacer pin is 3/8 of an inch wide, and that's the same width as our pin here. So 3/8 of an inch and 3/8 of an inch equals what? 3/4 of an inch, right? Remember that mark I made on the back side of this board? Yeah, I'm gonna disconnect it, move it over 3/4 of an inch to my right, and get it flush with the side of this miter gauge. That will allow me to, when I push this through the saw, this spacer pin will go right next to the saw blade. And just speaking of the spacer pin, I actually ended up cutting myself a longer one just because it's going to make it easier to hold on to this as I push it through the saw without getting my hand way down close to the blade. So I'm going to get this cut off to fit this height. But what I'll do is I'll take this off, move it over 3/4 of an inch, make our next cut, and then we'll be ready to try this thing. Okay, I've reattached the board to the jig, hopefully in the right position, and I've raised my dado stack up to just a little bit over 3/4 of an inch high off the bed of the table saw. Let's go ahead and make that second cut. All right, knock on wood, we're in business. Let me go grab a couple boards and we'll give this thing a try. All right, I've just grabbed a couple scrap pieces of, I believe it's just pine, that we'll use to test this out on. The way you want to set this up is you take your spacer pin and you place it right next to the pin that is already secured in our jig. Then we take our first piece and we set it right next to the spacer pin there. We're going to clamp this down to our jig, run it through the table saw, and then we'll add the second piece to it in a sec. All right, I just put some blue tape down on there so my spacer piece wouldn't fall into the saw. Okay, now what we want to do is remove our spacer. We don't need that anymore. We're going to move this first piece over, just to over the top of that pin, and then we'll add our second piece right in front of it. I'll clamp these two pieces together. We'll make our second cut, and then we can go on from there. Okay, now it's just a matter of unclamping these pieces and moving them both over the top of that pin. Putting them back down, it's clamped in place, and we can finish making our cuts that way. All right, let's see how this bad boy goes together. It's not bad. I'll take that. Yeah, that's not so bad. Simple box joint jig. Make it on your own, less than a half an hour. It's going to come in handy. Tell you what, you guys take care. Get out in your shops, make one of these things for yourself, and I'll talk to you later. Have a good one.